Tribal Health and Human Services Department of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes is proud to present Good Medicine, a program dedicated to the wellness of the Flathead Nation. The mission is summarized quite simply: a healthier people, a stronger nation. We will strive to make good medicine a reliable source of ideas and information about health issues so that everyone can make informed decisions about their own lifestyle and health care. You will meet health professionals, tribal government and spiritual leaders, and interesting people from the tribal community discussing important health issues that profoundly affect us all.
Hello, this is Good Medicine. I'm your host, Larry Pitts. Today we have a very distinguished and honorable Chuck Tellier. He is the program manager for a food distribution program. And so, Chuck, it's nice to have you aboard.
Well, Larry, it's just an honor to be here. I've heard so much about your program.
Yeah, you've seen it as many times as I have. I know that. So, Chuck, if there's anybody out in the TV land you'd like to say hello to, you can address that camera and say hello to them right now.
Oh. Just Stuart and Jared right now.
All right. Well, they're probably pretty happy now. They know that they're celebrities on TV. So, Chuck, how long have you been the program manager of the Commodities program?
This is going on my 4th year now. Okay. I've been 3 good years, and it's been very fast and sure busy. It's one of the busiest jobs I've ever had, I think.
Well, it's pretty obvious by watching you move around that you're moving very quick. Has there been a lot of changes in the last 3 years?
Actually, there hasn't been any really significant changes in the food package other than the packaging itself. We're getting now to where we're more probably commercialized. In other words, a lot of the labels and stuff that we used to have was from the USDA.
Right.
And it was very well, shall I say, commodity-like. And rather than stay with that kind of a stigmatization, they wanted to try to get it more commercial, like just everyday products in the supermarket. And that's been a real big development, I think. The other thing is that they're very health conscious in USDA, and they want to try to minimize the salt and the fats.
Okay.
And so they've reduced them quite a bit. Of course, it's not to where the level should be, not the optimum level by any means, but it requires some of the people to just take that into consideration and perhaps boil off some of the salt or some of the fats and render it off to make it more palatable for some who has a restricted diet.
Yep, and in reality, it's when you look at the so-called normal diet, it's high in fat and salt anyway.
Oh yeah, right. We have plenty of that around the country.
I mean, just buying your potato chips or you're getting your French fries with salt on them, and it all adds up. And so there was sort of a stigmatism, it was stereotyped of that process.
Right.
And,
we're trying to get away from that now. And in fact, they don't even like to be referred to as commodities anymore. They like to refer to it as the Food Distribution Office.
Well, I said that on purpose to start with, to see how you came back to that. So, your age is showing you didn't fight real quick. You sort of, the flight was on for a little while there.
Sure.
I was at a food fair. Actually, it was a health fair about a year ago, and your program had 2 different cans of pineapple, if I remember right. And they were having us do a blind taste test. And I remember the food distribution pineapple actually tasted better to me at that point than a name brand that was on the shelf. Do you see that quite often in those surveys?
Well, yes. Whenever we do those type of food testing things, it always turns out that it's very seldom, and it's usually by luck, that someone picks out a commodity item. Because if the truth is known, and we like that to be published, is that when we get foods from USDA, it's on the open market. And most large chains will provide that particular food. Now, they would put a USDA label on it, but simply because that was the way they wanted to run it at that time. But Del Monte provides a lot of stuff, Kellogg's provides a lot of stuff. All of the name brand food items that you get in the grocery store is usually provided to USDA for that issuance.
You know, I mean, that's a really wonderful background, really, for people who may be watching this program today, for the fact that, you know, you're getting quality stuff.
Oh, yes.
Just because the label isn't the same label.
Yeah, and for a lot of times that I've heard in the past here, where people have been saying, well, you know, we have really poor health because of commodities. Well, it's not necessarily the commodity food itself that is the blame to it. Now, it can take a portion of the blame, but certainly not all of it. And one of the reasons why that has to be known is that we do pride ourselves in getting the best kind of food. It has to pass all the standards that are set by USDA. They can't just get anything or the cheapest by any means.
Right. And most of us out in the other part of the world who aren't using, you know, the food distribution program, our standards are usually our own standards.
Right, right.
They're not highly balanced.
For sure.
That's right. So Chuck, let's get into a question that you were, you know, talking about earlier, and that is, if I wanted to become eligible for your program, how long of a wait would I have?
Well, actually, the wait that you would have to be eligible would only be as long as it takes to get you certified. And in order to do that, we would have to have some requirements there that you'd have to prove your residence. You'd need to have a current light bill, a phone bill, some verification of income, what county you live in. One of the things that few people know, and it's not very widely expressed, is that the area that this particular program serves is the reservation boundaries. So if, in other words, if you live right outside of the reservation boundary and you have an address that indicates that, then you wouldn't be eligible for commodities. Of course, the self-employed people, they need to bring in all of their papers to verify what they have, any savings that you might have, or any money on hand or anything like that. And then if you're within the limits, you'll be certified that day and be eligible that day.
Okay.
Providing that you can get in on that particular day, because sometimes we're just overwhelmed there.
I've seen the lines.
Yeah, we serve around 500 families per month, which is quite considerable when you consider there's only about 20 working days during the month that we actually service that.
Now, do you only service tribal members?
Oh, no, it's anyone on low income. It's anyone who qualifies. And
who lives within the reservation boundaries?
Right, and there's no national origin requirements or anything such as that.
Okay. So now if I lived in Missoula County just off the reservation, it wouldn't mean I couldn't get commodities, I just couldn't get them through your distribution center, right? I could go to Missoula County?
Well, there isn't any in Missoula County. The only place that there is commodities is on reservations.
Really?
Yeah, there is none on the state.
Okay, so
if you're in Great Falls or Billings or Butte, for instance, or Missoula, you won't be able to get commodities at all.
If I live in Harlem, Montana, I wouldn't get them.
Then your option would probably be only food stamps.
Okay. So but there is an option, which is the food stamp program. So, okay. Do you get a lot of people who come in who are misinformed about your program?
Well, not necessarily misinformed. They aren't quite sure what's going on, and they seem timid to ask. And of course, there's a lot of times when just word of mouth going around the community, they may be misinformed for a short while, but it doesn't take very long to get it straightened out or anything.
Well, it seems to me that you have a really good staff. I mean, I see them educate people. They take time with people. They don't make somebody feel, you know, like they're not valuable.
Oh, I'm telling you, I really pride the program that we have with the staff that runs it there. They've been in there quite a while, and believe me, it's not easy to deal with people day in and day out, and a lot of them are kind of anxious about wanting to get in and out of there right away, and they have to, you know, be as pleasant as they can, and sometimes it's very difficult, but no, I'll put that staff up against just about anybody's program because, in fact, in the Mountain Plains region, which we're a part of, we have a pretty high evaluation, I guess I should say, for our staff. The people down in Helena who monitor us think quite a bit of the program that we have here in the Flathead.
All right. Do you want to name the people on your staff?
Certainly, yeah. Our certifiers, we'll start off with Maxine McDonald. She's the senior certifier. She's been with the program a few years.
Well, she came there with the building as far, didn't she?
No, not quite.
Oh, okay.
She'd appreciate that. And then there's Laura Lumphrey. She is the second certifier that we have. Nancy Shaw, she takes care of the issuance. She's the issuance clerk. And then in the warehouse, we have Rocky Duranlo, who's the foreman. He takes care of everything that's in the warehouse and supervises two workers. One is Frank Tenasket, and the other one is Joe DeMontier. Frank has been there longer than anybody else, I think. He's been there for quite a while. He rather enjoys that.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
Well, you see it. Now, is there any time of the month that's better to pick up your commodities as far as?
Oh, definitely. It's always good to give us a ring at 745-4115 to see how the crowd is going, because there's a lot of times, especially near the end of the month, we're really overrun. I mean, it seems like people wait till the last minute to try to get in before we close down. We have to close down 3 days on the end of each month just to get in new inventory and get all of our inventory in the right place. What I mean by in the right place is that we have a policy there where it's first in, first out. In other words, we don't want to put boxes of prunes, for instance, way in the back and just leave it there. We like to get it out in front so it can be used and won't have very long warehouse life, you might say.
Shelf life is.
Yeah.
Now, you got a special program that you do the third Friday of each month. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Okay, what we do on those particular days is we will do orders for home delivery. And what we do is the staff themselves just go ahead and put the orders together and get them ready for the communities. The communities that are served are Arley, Hot Springs, Ronan, Polson, Elmo. And the criteria that we have for a home delivered is first they have to be elderly, 60 or over. And then they have to be handicapped or disabled in some way where they're unable to get to the commodity store. So we make those deliveries on the third week of each month, and on the third Friday is always set aside just to get those orders together. We don't shut down that third week, but we do have, let's say, not full staff.
Skeleton crew.
We have one person who has to go out in the delivery truck and deliver those to the various communities.
Now, what I was hearing some guy talk the other day about the calendar you got with the centerfolds of different foods for each month.
The centerfolds? I missed that part.
He said it's 2 in a month.
Yeah, right. Well, what we try to do is, it occurred to us here some time ago that what was happening was people were showing up at the warehouse wanting to get issued, and we happened to be closed that day for various reasons. Well, we got our computer program together and we started putting out calendars where we could let people know what days we're going to be open. And like this month here, which is September, the calendars that we have available now are for October. So when the person goes in to get their commodities, or if they go in just to sign up, or if they just happen to drop by, they can pick up one of those calendars And then they can kind of judge when would be the best time for them to go in, so that they know that we're going to be open and not make a trip for nothing.
Right.
We have a lot of people who get very irritated with us when they will get there at, say, 12:30, or maybe at 2:30 or 3:30 rather, or sometimes at 11:30, and they can't get issued right away. They get very upset because, of course, they've come a long ways in some cases, and they don't have a lot of other things to do, but they'll have to wait. And if they had one of those calendars, it would be just easier for them to budget their time, and it would make less hardships on us, you know.
Right.
So.
You know, for somebody out there watching right now, they're sitting there and they're writing some of this stuff down, and they say, well, what time don't you want me there? I know, is it like 3:30 is your cutoff line?
Yes. Well, we open the doors at 8 o'clock, but because of the stuff that we have to get stocked in the morning, and more things that the warehouse has to do, it's very seldom that we get to issue anything before 9 o'clock. It's very seldom that we'll get to issue before 9 o'clock. But what we have is a sign-in sheet, and as soon as a person comes in, they sign in, and then we go in that order. A lot of people will come in and say, well, put me down, and no, I'm sorry, we can't do that. We can't take calls and make reservations. If you're there and you sign in, then that's the order that you'll get served. And then at 11:30, we shut down so we can get it restocked and reorganized in the warehouse. And then at 3:30, we do the same thing, but then at 3:30, we have to take inventory. And I was amazed to find out that we do daily inventory. When I first started there, I thought, well, we do probably weekly, or maybe even monthly, but no, they do it daily, and they have to account for each item. Anything that they can't account for, they'll have to go in and search all the issuance that they did that day, and it's very seldom that they get out of there at 5 o'clock. It's more often than not, the warehouse staff stays there past 5.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't have appreciation for
Well,
that. But
you know, that pecking order you don't, because, you know, if you're coming in getting distribution of food, you just come in for your package, you get it, and you're gone, and you don't realize what it takes to stock that, to make accountable.
right. And they're very particular about that. It's always been something that they've been very good about. Well, by they, I mean the staff that we have there.
Right. Ounce of prevention goes a long ways, doesn't it?
Oh yes, pretty competent, because you can imagine if you had 5 cans of a particular product missing, and then you have 5 of a different product missing, all of a sudden you've got a mountain of stuff that's unaccounted for, and then you're trying to figure out, well, what did I do? Where did it go? How did it get misplaced? And a lot of times you'll find little, I don't know, it seems like practical jokes, but somebody will pick up a can of corn, for instance, out of what's available there. They do their own shopping. So they'll pick up a can of corn and get down the aisle a ways, decide they don't want the corn. They'll just set it in with the spinach maybe. And then all of a sudden we're off on the spinach until we finally start looking at the cans and, oh, somebody put some corn in there.
Okay.
So these guys are sitting in there going through all that paperwork and racking their brain, and sometimes saying a few expletives, you know, but not very often. And then they find out that there's some corn in with the spinach.
Well, that's
But it happens.
That's sort of life, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It all ends up in the same place, and it's a food distribution thing.
Yeah.
So, what are your guidelines for me to qualify for your program?
Well, the first thing you have to do is if you're a single person, you would have to be earning less than $779
Per month?
per month.
Okay.
Now, when I say earning, that means that's what you have available to you. Now, what they'll do is they'll do a gross income on you, and they'll find out how much you have in the bank, or if any, or in savings, or any bonds, or anything such as that. If you have some savings, for instance, or bonds that total more than $1,750, you would be ineligible. Only because they figure, well, if you spend that, that's about how much it would take for you to live for a month if you spend it on the necessities.
Okay.
Anyway, back to our scale, $779 for a single person, and then it goes up to $2,308 for a family of 8. Now, in between there is increments of $218. So if you add a person, add $218 to it, then you'd have what it would be for 3, 4, 5, or 6. But that's the one thing. The other thing is that, as I indicated before, you have to live on the reservation. And you have to have a verification of income. You can't just put it on the paper and think that that's going to be the end of it. You also have to sign a release of confidentiality so that it can be checked on throughout. And you can't be receiving food stamps.
Okay.
We have a good cooperative agreement with the Lake County and Sanders County, where they will do references for us, we do references for them. If somebody's on food stamps, for instance, and they decide that they want to go on to Commodities, all they have to do is just get a release from the food stamps, and then they can come over to this, or vice versa.
Okay. What is the requirement list?
The requirement list itself is most of what we just talked about. Food stamp release, verification of income, self-employment expenses, college grants. That's one thing we didn't talk about. That's also included.
As income?
As income,
Okay.
right. And so if you're going to college and you're not earning any other income, then that money that you get for the grant, some Pell Grant or whatever, that would be considered income. 18 or older, and dates of all birth dates, of all people in the household, and a picture ID of some type. That's pretty much all the requirements that you need.
What if you're 17, living on your own, supporting yourself? What a person like that have to do to become eligible? Or can they be eligible?
You'd have to wait until your 18th birthday.
Really?
That's all you could do.
Now,
that isn't all you could do as far as getting assistance. I'm sure there's other agencies that would give assistance. And then there's always the food banks.
Right.
You know, so I'm sure that there's people who have applied for Commodities and been very up against it, but were ineligible for some reason. They always have these other alternatives, and we usually suggest them to go to the food banks and things like that.
so what kind of alternatives are we talking about as far as, are we looking at the food banks, we're looking at the distribution programs, we're looking at the food stamp program, any other programs that you can think of?
Right offhand, I can't think of any other ones that would deal mostly with food distribution.
Okay. We're starting to wind down pretty quick here, Chuck. Paperwork. Why does a person have to do more of it when they come in?
Okay, well, one of the complaints that we generally get here is that, well, I've already applied, I have all my paperwork in there. Why is it that I have to come in and do it again? Well, what they have to understand is that your certification usually lasts for maybe 6 months. If you're a working person and you're certified for 6 months, then there's a good chance that your employment status may have changed. You might have went back to work, in other words. Or you may have found some means of income. It's necessary to report that right away. So we can't just keep duplicating the paperwork that's in there. We have to get it updated. And for instance, if a person's on a fixed income, like you're an elderly person on Social Security, we could certify you for perhaps a year, and you wouldn't have to do any more paperwork. But those who are young and active, and or maybe just changing addresses, you know, that has to be taken into consideration.
And so that's why you do it more often.
And it's one of the One of the harsh realities of life is that we have to follow those
So
kind
like
of
daily
procedures.
inventory.
Yeah, just about the same, yeah.
How long is a person certified for?
Well, it's usually 6 months, generally. And as I indicated, they will certify up to a year. It's really at our discretion and what the circumstances are with the individuals.
What is this pickup list I keep hearing you talk about when I come in and visit you in your office?
Pickup list.
If I'm on so-and-so's pickup list.
Oh, okay, yes, all right, all right. You kind of threw me a curve on
Oh, you
that
thought I
one.
was talking about truck.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Well, there's nothing wrong with my truck.
Right.
What we have is on an original application, we ask a person to list a number of people, maybe 2 or 3, that may be able to pick up for them. In other words, let's say me and you live next to one another. And you're going down to get commodities, and I tell you, well, Larry, would you pick mine up for me? And if you're on the list that if I put your name on that list, then you're able to do that.
Right.
But if you're not on the list, then even if I call and say, well, Larry's going to come in and pick my stuff up, no, I'm sorry, we can't do that.
Right.
So it has to be an agreement between you and someone else.
Got it.
And as long as we have that on paper, then we're all right.
Yeah, it protects your posterior.
Right.
Okay. All right. What about commodities? I have no food. If I get commodities and I have no food stamp release, what's that all about?
Well, in order to get commodities, you have to have a food stamp release.
Because you can't be getting both.
Because you can't be getting both. And if you are getting both, and the feds find out about it, there's pretty hard sanctions.
So that's a federal offense, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And of course, we're always getting lists of people who are ineligible because of violations such as that.
Okay.
So they really keep track of that.
To be eligible for home delivery.
Home delivery is, as I indicated earlier, is just being elderly and handicapped.
Now, what is elderly?
60 and over.
Okay, because you have
we
different
use that as-
programs, it's
oh,
different.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's 55, it's 60, it's 65, so.
We use 60 as a standard because that coincides with all of our senior programs, the nutrition program and others. It would be nice for one day for us to have it
Just
uniform.
one standard, one form.
Yeah,
For
really,
all your
wouldn't that
programs.
be nice?
That'd be great. Well, Chuck, guess what? We've run out of time.
Well, that's
You know, I think we need to have you back again sometime to go over some other things your program does.
Sure,
And
I'd
I
be
would,
happy
I
to do that.
would love to have you do that. I have one last question.
Okay. I hope it's not a hard one.
Do you throw horseshoes better left-handed or right-handed?
Right now, I don't throw horseshoes.
Cool. Well, Chuck, again, it's been my pleasure to have you aboard.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody out there in TV land. If you have any questions, send them to Tribal Health and Human Service in care of Larry Pitts, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much, and good day.
Thank you.
Good Medicine is your program. We hope you watch this and subsequent programs to stay informed about your health care. And we'd like to hear from you about how we're doing. Please direct any comments or suggestions you have to us. You can reach us at